Hi, my name is Jeff H. Sipe, and I have over 10 years of recruiting experience, including 5 years at Google. Lately, I've been getting a lot of comments from my YouTubers asking me to create questions for them for their specific job for a specific interview. And I did do a video on this subject, but I realized that when I did that initial video, I didn't really show the how of how we would actually create questions based on a job description. So this is the second installment of what questions will I be asked in an interview. And this will definitely be another screen share. So now I want to give you these additional tools really in the question creation component that are going to truly help you have success when you're trying to come up with your own questions. I definitely encourage you to go back and watch that first video, but for now, let's have fun. I pinned that video up above. If you like my content, please like. If you have any comments, please comment below. And if you like my overall content, please subscribe. Item 1, types of questions. So without a doubt, the highest percentage type of question that's going to be asked of you is behavioral. So before you even create these practice questions, I just really want you to have those examples done and created because it's going to make the practice component that much easier. But just know that most companies are going to spend the majority of their time focused there. So just something to be keeping in mind. Secondly, open-ended questions, and these can be vague questions. They can be hypothetical, situational. In a similar facet, I want you to create the frameworks first, which is just creating a generic structure for how you answer questions in your specific space before creating those practice questions. And even, let's say, for instance, you're going in for an individual contributor role at Amazon where you know they're basically asking 100% behavioral questions. I still want you to practice open-ended questions. It will make you more nimble, and actually what will come up as you think about that framework is that framework will then put you back into your behavioral example and make you think, okay, did I actually cover all these subjects and concepts when I talk through my example? So a really, really helpful exercise and will just help you think outside the box. Item 2 is question structure. So I think this piece is absolutely really critical because you're not used to creating questions for yourself. So I want to give you 4 examples of how you might create questions based on a job description. So first, tell me about a time when, how would you, what are, and the last one is just making up a scenario, and this comes from your unique experience. So let's utilize a simple concept like managing risk with this set of 4 types of questions. Tell me about a time when you had to manage risk in a program. How do you manage risk? What are the steps you take to manage risk? And your security team lets you know that they've identified a major risk in your program. How do you proceed? And remember, you can absolutely play around with the types of questions, but this is just a really, really simple way to stay organized and for how to look at the job description. Item 3, positive, negative. Just remember when you create questions, you're going to want to create some questions that are really positive and other questions where you're going to have a little bit of conflict. And so you want to mix in both because your interviewers are definitely going to tackle both. So now for the screen recording component, let's look at a pretty generic, this is a technical program manager, Google Cloud in Sydney. So all I want to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this into a Google Doc, and I'm going to organize it in a way that's really beneficial for me. Pro tip here, edit, paste without formatting. It will get rid of some of the messiness when you transfer this piece over. Now for me, I do one simple edit, and the simple edit is I move the about the job and responsibilities to the top because I'm actually less concerned about qualifications. The role and responsibilities are going to tell me a little bit more about the job. Then I want to chop down and focus on the higher level concepts that I'm able to pull out of the job description from each section. So I actually want to go back and do this exercise with you. So if we go back in here let's start to edit this. And so Google projects like our users span the globe and require managers to keep the big picture in focus. Okay, so I probably want to be thinking about big picture. So that's one. As a program manager at Google, you will lead complex projects. Okay, so I probably want to be thinking about, let's just take this component and say, okay, leading complex projects. You plan requirements with internal customers. Yep, this is definitely another concept that I want to be looking at, and so on and so forth. And so you will just go through it and just kind of come up with these concepts, and then you'll have them, and you'll have them by area. So about the job, responsibilities, again, minimum and preferred qualifications, these high level concepts. So as we flip over, one of the things just from an organizational standpoint is I want to remove those buckets. Do I really care that one is about the job versus responsibilities versus qualifications? I actually don't. So remove all those items and then let's go in and let's create some questions. And so I want to go through this exercise with you because, again, I feel like this was missing in the last video. So keep the big picture in focus. So I'm going to start with the behavioral. Tell me about a time focusing on the big picture helped you have great success. We can also flip this question to say, tell me about a time where you missed focusing on the big picture and it created a conflict. So always think positive, negative, as I mentioned before. Then let's go a little bit more vague, generic. How would you keep the big picture in focus? Using a framework to answer that question. What are your top 3 big picture focus areas when starting a new program? So we niche down and we try to really focus on maybe just a few. And then a scenario or hypothetical question. I want you to imagine you were asked to create the big picture for a program without all the data. How do you proceed? And so you may be asking, Jeff, well, how did you come up with that last question? Well, it's probably something as a program manager you've faced. So when you're thinking about creating these questions in correlation with these concepts, really start to think about, hey, have I actually faced that in my career? And then you can create questions in that manner. Let's at least do one more. You lead complex projects, right? So tell me about the most complex program you have run in your career. Really, really easy. That's actually not positive or negative. It's finding the middle ground. How would you lead a big project? Again, come in with that really good framework. What are the complexities you try to discover before joining a new program? Definitely something you would want to explore if you were stepping into a new project or program. And you are tasked with taking over a program more than halfway to completion. What steps do you take to get up to speed? Again, this is going to be a very common scenario for a program manager. So when you think about the complexity and working across teams in a project, think about creating a question in that manner. Let's do one more. Let's do this last one. You plan requirements with internal customers. So tell me about a time you did not plan the requirements appropriately and what happened as a result. Flip it to the positive. Tell me about a time where your requirement planning was so strong that you sped up the timeline and decreased the budget, for example. Again, let's go generic. How do you plan requirements to create strong internal relationships? Come in with that good framework. What are the requirements your internal customer is likely most interested in? Now you've flipped it to thinking a little bit about other teams, other people, so it's a little bit different question. And lastly, let's create a more specific scenario-based question. An emerging technology is going to strongly impact your program. How do you plan requirements that can adapt to changing tech? I think that's a great question. Again, the depth, it was just something I needed to think about. Now, each one of these questions, yeah, it took maybe a minute per section to come up with the questions, but if you have familiarity doing this in your career, it's going to create great success. I truly believe the biggest item here is effort. Make the effort to go through this exercise. It will probably take about a half an hour, but you would be shocked at the value. You will likely come up with at least half the questions that are going to be asked in your interview or something very, very close. And so ask yourself, if somebody were to tell you a half an hour of effort meant that you would get half the questions that were coming up in your interview, would it be worth it? And I truly think it would be. I really hope this video helps. Thanks so much and good luck.